They say every man's home is his castle. Mine is more like a digital fortress, and I'm the guy who designed the blueprints, laid every wire, and wrote the code for the gatehouse. A few days ago, my own wife, bless her heart, tried to sneak a Trojan horse past the main gate using a disguise she bought from the dollar store. The result wasn't a marital crisis. It was the hardest I've laughed in my entire 36 years on this planet. This isn't a story about betrayal. It's a story about what happens when a technological novice tries to play mind games with a cybersecurity professional on his own home turf. My name is Gabriel Alvarez. I'm 36 years old, and by trade I'm a cybersecurity analyst. It sounds like a fancy job title, but when you boil it down, my entire career is based on a simple principle: people make mistakes. They click on the wrong link. They use password 123 for their bank account. They leave digital footprints all over the place. My job is to find those footprints, understand the patterns they make, and either show my clients how to hide them better or follow them to find someone who's not supposed to be there. I hunt for ghosts in the machine. It makes you a certain kind of person. You become methodical. You learn to trust data more than gut feelings. You see the world as a series of systems of inputs and outputs. If you do A and B, you expect C to happen. If D happens instead, your brain doesn't get emotional. It gets curious. It immediately starts asking, why? My friends joke that I'm professionally paranoid, and they're not entirely wrong. I don't just lock my doors. I have a system that logs every time a door or window is opened. I don't just use a password for my email. I use two-factor authentication that requires a physical key. It's not that I'm scared, it's that I believe in building good, strong walls. My home life, however, is the complete opposite of that rigid, logical world. It's warm, chaotic, and wonderful. Thanks almost entirely to my wife. She's 34, and she is the yin to my digital yang. Where I see life in terms of networks and protocols, she sees it in colors, emotions, and experiences. She's the one who reminds me to look up from the screen and see the sunset. She's my anchor to the real messy analog world, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. There is one area where our worlds collide in the most hilarious way possible: technology. To put it gently, my wife is a technological novice. It's an adorable, sometimes baffling fact of our life together. I build secure networks for a living. She once called me in a panic from the living room because, and I quote, the Wi-Fi ran out of internet. She thought the router was like a pitcher of water that needed to be refilled. I've spent hours patiently explaining the difference between a browser and a search engine, why she can't just download more memory, and that no, the Nigerian prince is not going to send her $1 million. I'm her personal on-call IT department. The phrase, "Hey honey, can you come look at this," is the unofficial soundtrack to our evenings, and I love it. It feels like I have this one superpower I get to use to make her life easier. This dynamic is most obvious when it comes to our home itself. When we bought our house, the first thing I did was map out the entire home network. I ran my own shielded Ethernet cables, installed an enterprise-grade router and firewall, and set up multiple separate wireless networks, one for us, one for guests, and a third heavily restricted one for our smart home gadgets. I know that sounds like overkill, but to me it's just digital hygiene. It means I have complete and total visibility over my domain. I'm the administrator, the super user. I can see every single device that connects to my network, its unique hardware signature, and where its data is going. This isn't about spying, it's about knowing the baseline, the normal rhythm of my digital home, so that if anything abnormal ever appears, my internal alarms go off. I am the architect, the gatekeeper, and the watchman on the wall, all rolled into one. And my wife, the lovely, brilliant, and utterly tech-illiterate woman I share my life with, was blissfully unaware of any of this. She just knew that the Wi-Fi was always fast. She saw a simple, invisible utility. I saw a complex ecosystem that I had built from the ground up and knew intimately. That blissful ignorance is the foundation upon which this entire ridiculous saga was built. She thought she was being clever, planting a seed of doubt in my mind. She had no idea she was trying to play hide and seek with the man who had literally built the house and installed the digital equivalent of cameras in every room. She was bringing a water pistol to a naval battle, and I was the admiral of the entire fleet. I was about to watch from my command bridge as she aimed, fired, and managed to soak herself and absolutely no one else. The opening salvo was just 5 days away. It began on a Tuesday. Tuesdays are usually the most boring day of the week, a sort of beige, featureless landscape between the lingering dread of Monday and the hopeful slope towards Friday. We were on the couch deep in the most critical negotiation of our evening, deciding what to watch. I was advocating for a gritty Scandinavian crime drama, with subtitles lots of snow and emotionally repressed detectives. She was making a compelling case for a reality show about competitive miniature cake decorating. It was a familiar, comfortable stalemate, the kind of pointless low-stakes debate that fills the quiet spaces in a happy marriage. The living room was warm, bathed in the soft glow of our ridiculously oversized television. The scent of the garlic bread from dinner still hung faintly in the air. It was a perfect slice of domestic tranquility. And then my phone, which was sitting face up on the coffee table, buzzed. It wasn't a text message buzz, which has a sharp staccato rhythm. It wasn't an email buzz, which is more of a polite, low hum. This was the specific notification tone I had set for my social media apps, a little 3-note chime. I rarely get messages on there from anyone other than distant relatives posting blurry pictures of their grandkids. I glanced at it, expecting to see a notification that my aunt had tagged me in a photo from 2007. But the name on the screen wasn't familiar, it was simple and generic sounding. Jessica. The profile picture was one of those stock photo-looking images, a silhouette of a woman against a sunset. No mutual friends, no identifying information. It was a ghost account. My internal threat level meter, which usually sits at a comfortable green, ticked up 1 notch into blue. This was an anomaly. The message itself was short, just a single line of text. It read, "Hi. This might be weird, but I see you at the coffee shop on Elm Street sometimes. You have a really nice smile." I stared at it for a second. My first purely logical thought was that it was a bot. A new, more sophisticated kind of spam designed to lure you into a conversation before trying to sell you cryptocurrency. I get these kinds of probes all the time in my professional life. It's called spear phishing. You find a small, publicly available detail about your target, in this case, a coffee shop I do, in fact, frequent, and you use it to build a pretense of familiarity. It's textbook social engineering. Amateur hour, really. But then I felt a shift in the atmosphere of the room. The pressure on the couch cushion next to me changed. I could feel my wife's attention, which had been focused on the TV screen, where tiny fondant sculptures were being judged, pivot and lock onto me with the intensity of a heat-seeking missile. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw her lean just a fraction of an inch closer. She was trying to read the screen without looking like she was trying to read the screen. It was a masterclass in failed subtlety. "Oh, you got a message?" she asked. Her voice was a masterpiece of forced casualness cranked so high it had snapped off. She sounded like she was hosting a daytime talk show. "Anyone I know?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept looking at the message. The coffee shop on Elm Street, a nice smile. It was so perfectly generically flattering. A little digital note floating in the ether. My wife, sensing she was losing the initiative, pressed on. "Is that someone from your work?" And that's when another flag went up. A bright red one this time. She knows my work colleagues. She knows I communicate with them through encrypted work channels, not on a public social media platform. It was the wrong question. It was a question designed to do one thing to see if I would lie. She was testing my reaction. She was running a diagnostic. I turned my head slowly and looked at her. Her face was a perfect mask of innocent curiosity, but her eyes were wide, and she was holding her breath just a little. She was watching me the way a bomb disposal expert watches a ticking clock. In that instant, the first piece of the puzzle clicked into place. My brain trained to see patterns and identify threats processed. The data points: 1. A suspicious anonymous message arrives. 2. My wife, who normally couldn't care less about my phone notifications, suddenly develops an intense laser-like focus on it. 3, she asks leading questions that don't fit our normal interactions. Conclusion. The source of the probe and the observer of the probe's impact were likely connected. Or to put it in simpler terms, this wasn't an external attack. The call was coming from inside the house, but I couldn't be sure. Not yet. It was just a hypothesis. I needed more data. So I decided to play my part in her little experiment. I gave the phone a dismissive little wave. Nah, it's nothing. I said, my voice as neutral as I could make it. Probably just spam. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down on the coffee table. It was a deliberate move, a gesture that said, this is not important. I turned my attention back to the TV where a man was weeping because his miniature Eiffel Tower made of sugar had collapsed. Oh, okay, she said. The single word was loaded with a complex mixture of disappointment and relief. She had expected something, a flicker of guilt, a flash of anger. I gave her nothing, a flat, uninteresting baseline. For the rest of the night, I was the perfect, oblivious husband. I commented on the structural integrity of the sugar cakes. I agreed that my Scandinavian crime drama could probably wait. We went through the motions of our evening routine, brushing our teeth, setting the alarm, arguing over who had stolen the good pillow. Everything was normal. But beneath the surface, my mind was racing. I wasn't feeling angry or betrayed. To be honest, I was feeling tickled, intrigued. A little part of me, the professional part, was genuinely impressed by the audacity of the plan. She was trying to socially engineer a social engineer. It was like watching a toddler try to pick a master locksmith's pocket. Adorable and doomed. Lying in bed that night, long after her breathing had settled into the slow rhythm of sleep, I replayed the moment in my head. The timing of the message, the generic profile, the clumsy questions. It was a classic honey trap, a tactic as old as espionage itself. The goal was to provoke a reaction to trick me into engaging with the fake profile so she could catch me. But she had made a fundamental critical error. She had completely misjudged her target. She thought she was dealing with a husband. She was dealing with a cybersecurity analyst. She was trying to play on my emotions, but she had accidentally activated my professional curiosity. She thought she was testing my heart, but she had inadvertently issued a challenge to my brain. She saw this as a game of feelings. I saw it as a penetration test on my personal life. And I always ace my penetration tests. I was maybe 90% sure it was her, but I wasn't going to act on that. I needed proof. I needed logs. I needed a digital smoking gun. As I lay there in the dark, a slow smile spread across my face. This was going to be fun. She had started a game on a board she didn't understand, using rules she hadn't read against an opponent who had designed the board and written the rules. The next move was mine. I just had to wait for her to send the next message to provide me with the next data packet. I knew I wouldn't have to wait long. The game was afoot. The very next afternoon, right on schedule, my phone buzzed again. I was in my home office, supposedly debugging a piece of code, but really, I was just watching my network traffic monitor. It was a habit from my job, like a chef who can't help but notice if the salt shakers at a restaurant are properly filled. I saw the notification pop up on my desktop. Another message from my so-called secret admirer. My wife, who was in the living room just down the hall, called out, "Everything okay in there, honey?" Her timing was as always impeccable, a little too impeccable. "Just fine," I called back, focusing. I opened the message. It was more of the same, flattery that felt like it was copied and pasted from a How to Flirt article from the early 2000s. "I saw you at the coffee shop and couldn't stop thinking about your smile." We hadn't been to a coffee shop together in weeks. "You have such an intense focus, it's really attractive." This one was a little closer to home, probably gleaned from her own observations. But here's where my professional brain took over from my husband brain. The message wasn't the point. The delivery system was the point. Amateurs always make the same mistakes. They focus on the story they're telling, but they completely ignore the fingerprints they're leaving all over the crime scene. And this was a messy, messy crime scene. The profile picture was a stock photo of a sunset. The account had been created just 6 days ago. There were no other friends, no posts, no history. It was a digital ghost, a shell company of a person. A professional would have aged the account, given it a backstory, populated it with fake friends and mundane posts about brunch or walking a non-existent dog. This was the equivalent of a spy showing up in a trench coat and sunglasses on a sunny day at the beach. It screamed fake. I leaned back in my chair, a grin spreading across my face. This was no longer a domestic mystery. It was a simple technical puzzle. A very, very simple one. My wife, bless her heart, is 34 years old and a wonderful person, but her understanding of technology is, let's call it user level. She knows how to use her apps, how to post on social media, how to order things online. But the inner workings, the architecture, that's all magic and smoke to her. She doesn't know about VPNs or proxy servers. She probably thinks an IP address is something you get from a doctor. And that was her fatal flaw. She was trying to pull off a digital deception from inside the very fortress I had built. See, I'm a cybersecurity analyst. My job, the one that pays our mortgage, is to think like the bad guys. I design and secure networks for a living. And my own home network, that's my Sistine Chapel. I built it from the ground up. I selected the router, flashed it with custom firmware, configured every last firewall rule, and set up logging protocols that are probably overkill for a simple 2-bedroom house. I know every device connected to it by name. I know my smart thermostat's digital signature better than I know my own cousin. So for me, investigating this wasn't a matter of hacking or complex sleuthing. It was a matter of opening a log file. It was the digital equivalent of looking at the security camera footage from my own front porch. I logged into my router's administrative interface. The screen glowed with the familiar dashboard of data packets flowing in and out, a river of information that I knew how to read. I didn't even need to do a deep dive. It was all right there on the surface. I looked at the timestamp of the message I had just received. Then I cross-referenced it with the network activity logs for that exact second. And there it was. A packet of data sent from a device on my local network to the servers of the social media platform in question at the exact nanosecond the message was received. It was like watching a bank robber trip and drop their wallet with their driver's license inside on their way out of the vault. The log didn't just give me a vague location. It gave me the specific internal IP address assigned by my router. And my router, being the beautiful, well-configured machine, that it is also listed the unique hardware identifier for the device assigned to that IP. It's called a MAC address. Every phone, every laptop, every device has a unique one. It's like a digital fingerprint. I ran a quick check on the MAC address against my list of known devices, and bingo, the fingerprint matched. The call was coming from my wife's laptop. The very same laptop she was likely using right now in the living room, probably pretending to browse for new curtains. The whole ruse, the entire house of cards, collapsed in an instant. The mystery was solved. The case was closed, and I felt a feeling wash over me that I did not expect. It wasn't anger, it wasn't betrayal, it wasn't even disappointment. It was pure, unadulterated hilarity. The sheer absurdity of the situation hit me. My technologically novice wife had tried to run a stealth operation on a network architected by a cybersecurity professional. It was like trying to sneak a sandwich past a wolf, a hungry wolf, who had installed motion sensors in the kitchen. I started to chuckle. It was a low, quiet sound at first. Then it grew. The chuckle turned into a full-blown laugh. I put my head in my hands, my shoulders shaking. I was trying to stifle it, I really was, but it was no use. The dam had broken. Peals of laughter echoed out of my office. A moment later, her voice came from the doorway. "What's so funny?" I looked up. She was standing there, a look of manufactured curiosity on her face, but I could see the nervous tension in her eyes. She was still in character, still playing the part of the unsuspecting wife. I couldn't speak. I was laughing too hard. I just waved her over, tears streaming down my face. Confused, she walked over to my desk and peered at my monitor. And I showed her. I showed her the log file. I pointed to the timestamp that matched the message perfectly. I pointed to the internal IP address, and then I pointed to the device name right next to it. The custom name I had assigned it myself months ago, Wife's Laptop. I watched her face as she processed the information. She looked at the screen. She looked at me. She looked back at the screen. The color drained from her cheeks. The gears were turning, but the engine had seized. She didn't fully understand the technical details, but she understood the conclusion. She understood that big, flashing digital arrow pointing directly at her. Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. The game was up. Checkmate. My laughter finally subsided into wheezing gasps for air. I wiped a tear from my eye. "A secret admirer," I managed to choke out. "Really, from your own laptop, on my network. Honey, what were you thinking?" She just stood there, completely busted. The look on her face was a masterpiece of shame, frustration, and the slow dawning horror of just how badly she had miscalculated. And that's when the second wave of laughter hit me. It wasn't just a moment, it was a condition. For the next several days, I was useless. Every time I looked at her, I'd just break down laughing. We'd be making dinner, and I'd see her chopping an onion, and the image of her hunched over her keyboard typing, "You have an intense focus," would pop into my head, and I'd have to leave the room howling. We'd be watching TV, and I'd just start giggling for no apparent reason. It became my revenge. Not a cruel one, not an angry one, but a pervasive, inescapable, and utterly humiliating one. My laughter was the ghost of her failed operation haunting the halls of our home. She couldn't get mad at me. What was she going to say? "Stop being so amused by my clumsy attempt to manipulate you." After about 3 days of this, she finally broke. I was laughing so hard I was crying over a bowl of cereal, and she just threw her hands up in the air. "Okay, I get it. It was a stupid idea. I'm an idiot. Can you please just stop laughing?" I took a deep, shuddering breath, trying to regain control. "I'm sorry," I gasped. "It's just, the technical execution was so flawed." And that right there became the inside joke that defines our marriage to this day. Anytime one of us does something silly or ill-conceived, the other one just looks at them and says, "Well, the technical execution was flawed." The fake admirer was never spoken of again, its purpose served and its memory now a source of shared amusement. My victory wasn't in catching her. It was in the fact that her plan was so comically bad that it couldn't even start a real fight. She didn't test my loyalty. She tested my ability to breathe while laughing. And looking back on it now as a 36-year-old man who loves his wife, I wouldn't have it any other way. It was without a doubt the most flattering and hilarious failed intelligence operation I have ever had the pleasure of dismantling.